Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for coming on and for tuning in. We are running a little bit behind, so I appreciate your patience, and but most of all, I appreciate you just simply tuning in for Life Notes with Jen. Let's talk about sex, baby. And going from there, I want to just introduce my phenomenal guests and bring them all in. I have the lovely Dr. Nicole Holden, Mr. Sean Purefoy, and Mr. Cario Bullen. And I want to go ahead and begin by allowing you all to go ahead and introduce yourselves. So I'm just going to pick y'all out in the way that I see you. In my Brady Bunch bucket. So, Dr. Nicole, can you go ahead and then we'll go to Cario and to Sean.
Okay, thank you for having me. I'm Dr. Nicole Holden. I am a pastoral counselor. I own Holden Grace Pastoral Counseling LLC. I don't know. That's pretty much it. I don't have a whole lot more to add.
Okay, sounds good. Cario, tell us about you, sir.
I am a professional counselor's master's level. I also do talks when invited, and I'm really into cooking. And for my 9 to 5, I do administrative analysis for the local public assistance agency.
Okay. Thank you, Cario. And Sean, last but not least.
What's up, everybody? My name is Sean Purefoy. I am a husband of one, father of six, and I am an educator currently teaching seventh grade U.S. history in North Carolina. Um, I also enjoy cooking and sneakers.
Perfect. Thank you, Sean. And as y'all know, I'm the founder and director at Lifeline Therapy Center. I am your host, Jennifer Wilshire. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I practice right now in private practice, and in the past, I've done group practice in other settings. But my passion is for couples, for individuals, for people, and just making sure that we are well in who we are as individuals so that we can be well in our relationships. I'm very passionate about that. And I think it's important to delve into that. So, hence, Life Notes with Jen is something that I started that I really wanted to be able to go ahead, y'all, and have an opportunity to talk to people and to have people really assess, including myself, assess myself, assess who I am, and challenge you to assess who you are so that you can be well in your relationships. Because if you're not good, then your relationships aren't good, and vice versa. And that's truly what I believe. I'm going to go ahead and start, y'all. First things first, with the title of our talk is, and you can chime in at any time unless I just like call on you. But if you'd like to go ahead and start, you can. But basically, the title, when I thought about it, it was Let's Talk About Sex, Baby. And as you all know, because I think we're in similar age ranges, it's from that old song by Salt and Pepper, that's talking about. How do we need to have a conversation about our connections sexually, and in this relationship. Salt and Pepper is an old R&B hip hop rap group from the are they from the 80s, y'all, or 90s? They're 90s, 80s.
Late 80s, early
80s or
90s.
Late
90s.
80s, right? Okay. I was like, man, I'm dating myself. But but they basically they had a message, and it was more than just sex, because a part of the chorus says, let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the bad things and the good things that can be. And then it goes back to say, let's talk about sex. And so sex is so much more than the act, but I think it's important that we talk about the act and the outside piece of it as well. Disclaimer, all of us on here are people of faith. And so this conversation is not just for people of faith, but, you know, I think it's important just to put out there, if you want to go into that context as my guest, please, you have that freedom to do so. And if not, that's okay too. But first things first, y'all, what do you believe as far as talking about sex with your partner in a committed relationship and or marriage? Should we be having those conversations? How often do we have those conversations? Or should we just be having sex? What are your thoughts? Anyone can start. Go ahead.
I thought, if it's okay, I don't think we should just be having sex, because to me, it's so much more than just the physical act of sex. You know, I mean, that was cool when we might have been younger. But there's a lot. I mean, at least that's been my experience. The older I get, there's a lot more to it. And sex for me starts way before we even hit the bedroom. And so there better be conversations about at least the things that make sex better, you know. And so, yeah, I think that as necessary, the conversation should definitely be had.
Okay. Good.
I agree with that. I noticed in my own life that what tends to happen is that people talk more about sex before they actually get married, and then as and then if not purposely done, it tends to not be a big conversation. I mean, we'll talk more about the utility bill than we'll talk about sex. And that I think is problematic, because sometimes you lose that connection, you lose that synergy, and that whole energy that was behind it when you were still dating. And you know, it's and then it becomes more of a checkbox than a something that you really look forward to. And I think that becomes problematic. Now, not to say that I don't always look forward to sex. If we're serving sex, I'll take 2 helpings, please. I mean, that's fine. That's the reality of it. But it's not the same as if you have been building on it for a long amount of time, like you did when you were dating. You built on it while you weren't even in each other's presence. And then when you came together, for those of us that did not wait until we got married, when you came together, the excitement of it was so much greater because of the buildup prior.
Okay.
I think that like any team sport, check-ins are a must. There's I think it's really healthy to talk about, you know, what it is that you like, what it is that you don't like, because your preferences and your appetites, like everything with our bodies, have evolved since, you know, since you started having sex. Yeah, when you first started out. And I think that because of maybe like the stigmas that we grew up with about sex, or the information or lack thereof, kind of skewed our viewpoints on sex. It kind of made it like a taboo thing growing up, especially if you grew up in the church or whatever the case is. So it became like this really awkward thing to talk about, because, you know, like in high school you have sex education, and that's like some old dude or woman, just, you know, a teenager who don't even really know who you are as a person. You don't know what it is to be selfless. And you know, here you are talking about this thing that everybody just wants to do because your hormones are raging. So sex was never like really put in the best of contexts. So by the time you are able to do it, you do it, and then like that's like, you know, like Cario said, it just becomes this thing that you do. and that it becomes unfortunate after a while that it's not explored more.
And not to mention the factoring in the demonization of the male sex drive by society over centuries. That's
Mm.
that's hard to recover from.
Can you speak a little bit more to that, Carrie?
Um, who was it? It was one of the queens. I want to say it was Elizabeth that said, "Close your eyes and think of England."
Oh,
Um, and
this is
I mean,
her. This is her direction or her guidance to whom?
either she said it or she received that advice when she was looking for information on how to endure the act for the sake of procreation.
Wow, endure just alone for the Go ahead.
So there's that, and the fact of the matter is that male sexuality is underexplored. It just is assumed to be a thing. It's like for society they look at. I mean, like, how many times have we heard the statement that all they want is sex? All men want is
All man
sex,
wants.
and and they never try to look deeper into male sexuality as a relational concept. And why is it that men seem to want sex more often than women do? Is that really what's going on, or is that just how society views it because of whatever has happened over the years? Is there some sort of purpose behind it? Is it built off of their physiology? Is it an emotional thing? Is it a mental thing? Is it something about power dynamics, or is it something about um, true connection? What is sex to a man? And that's not something that's explored often enough, in my opinion.
And I think, were you going to say something, Dr. Nicole, before I go?
No, I'm actually taking it in because I've never really thought about the things that he's saying. I've never heard it from a male's perspective. And when I think about it, it was just, you know, it was just I don't think we think about you. It's like, and I hate to say it like that, but it's like
That
I don't
hurts a lot, actually.
well, I mean, I'm just speaking for me, but I
Mhm.
never really thought that there was feelings attached to it.
Mhm.
And even being a female who, and I'll see how this conversation goes, but even being a female who had been told, excuse me, plenty of times in my younger years, well, you think like a man when it comes to sex, meaning like, well, there's no emotion, there's no anything. It was just about a physical act. So that might be the perspective of some individuals. We really don't know. And so then it makes me think back to Jen's original question about when do we talk about it. And now I'm curious to know, well, when we do talk about, what are we talking about when we talk about sex?
Wow, that's deep. And I think that's pivotal. What you all just exchanged, Dr. Nicole and Carrie, like Carrie, with you saying, man, that hurts. But this is an opportunity for change, for education, and maybe we can help to set the tone to create the shift. Like, this can't continue to be what it is, and we can start by us shifting our mindsets. No matter, all of us here, also, I didn't state that before, y'all. For any of you who are watching, we're all married. All four of us are married. And in long-term relationships, I think all of us are at least 10 years in our marriage, if not much more than that. And so I say all that to say this, that if you're here thinking, well, I'm already married, it's too late for me. Do you have children? Do you have nieces and nephews? Are your body parts still working and that of your partners? And if so, it's not too late. This is an opportunity to try and set a new thing. If you want a new thing, then you got a new then you have to do a new thing, excuse me. And so being mindful about that, it's not too late. Let's go ahead, take the information, look at how we've come as far as we have, the mistakes we've made in the past. Let's learn from them and let's keep it moving and doing it better. And I think that ties in with my next point as far as, because of the communication or the way we communicate about sex or lack thereof, that definitely has an impact on the actual act happening. Because we're not checking in to say, "Hey, how are you? How are you feeling about our sex life? How are you feeling about sex in general? What was sex like for you, as far as when you might have first started it, or what was the conversation like, when you were younger, like Sean, you were speaking to earlier about growing up and coming into our own, other than that high school old woman or man teacher, who else talked to you? If I'm real and transparent, and I don't think my mother will be offended, so I can say this aloud while she's still alive. Um, when I wanted to have conversation about sex as a young girl, I was given a book, literally thrown a book, here, read this book, don't ask me no questions. And if you have questions, just read it again. And that's what I did. I read the book, and my mom knew that I would read the book because I'm a reader. I'm an avid reader. So I was curious. I was wondering. So I read the book about 6 times, just to make sure I understood what I read. And I was very, very interested and intrigued. But that has a lot to do with how it is that we show up in our relationships, sexually, as we grow, as we mature. And so when we think about talking about sex, and sex, we mentioned sex starting outside of the bedroom and communication. But I'll go back for a moment. I'm sorry, to communication. That just really hit me. I just felt it in my spirit. One of the main reasons why divorce happens, outside of things such as infidelity, money, communication, a big part of it, when it comes down to it, one of the research says that it's because of unmet expectations. And that speaks volumes, even when it comes down to sex. We didn't talk about it. And I had expectations, they weren't met. And so I'm going to have to do what I need to do to get my needs fulfilled. You need to do what you need to do, and let's keep it moving. So I say all that to say, next thing, how often should couples talk or check in about their sex life? What do you think about that? And if you want to speak to anything else I said, because I said a lot, I know you can.
I think that I'll jump in first. I think that it should be an ongoing conversation, and just alluding to what I said earlier, like great teams, great organizations check in often. Just to see how the last event, how the last quarter, went. We have check-ins with your coaches about like your performance and how it affects the team overall. And I think that with anything, if you want your sex life to thrive and be healthy, excuse me, I feel like sneeze coming on. It should be something that you talk about. I mean, as often as you can. I don't think that anything, especially if you're married, excuse me,
Bless you.
if you're married, I don't think that there should be a limit on how often you check in about anything, because when expectations aren't met, when if you feel like if you still feel like a stranger, or if you still feel like you can't bring something to your spouse, then that's a problem, and whatever itches, it needs to be scratched, and the amount of communication that takes place would determine who's going to be the one to scratch it. So you know the Bible says that the bed is undefiled. So that means that we have that free reign, and that autonomy to be whatever it is that our partners desires to be, and to also, you know, explore those things about ourselves, because, you know, as an educator, the only stupid question is the ones that don't get asked, right? Because how am I supposed to know that's something that you like? How is that supposed to be? How am I supposed to know that's something that you don't like, unless you say something? So it has to be, you have to be willing and open, and to have the conversation, and we also have to get over, again, like the taboo-ness of what sex is, and release the societal crazy things that we've been exposed to over our years, because you know, someone who was, I'll say this, someone who was introduced to pornography before I knew what sex really was, that really skewed for me what sex was. So I'm supposed to do it like this guy that I saw, and she's supposed to respond like this woman that was with the guy. And you know, there are other things that you can also do too. And after being in a relationship, I mean, like, as soon you come to find out that that is the furthest thing from the truth, right? Like, you know, once you really understand what the sex industry is, it's all a fantasy, you know, it's all fake, and real people don't act like that all the time, you know what I mean? And we have to then draw the line, and then what I had to do myself, I had to I had to transform my mind. Like, no, my wife is not some paid actress that is supposed to do these things to make me feel like the guy who was also acting when the girl who was acting did those things too. So it's really loaded, but to close that circle, this should definitely be a conversation that you have over and over again.
Yeah. I think if I could jump in for a second, so much of what you said just resonated with me. In my introduction, it was so brief, and partially because sometimes when you have a lot going on, you don't know where to start. And so with this, you know, even with the co-host speaking and saying how, you know, he was introduced to, you know, pornography even before being introduced to sex. Pornography was a thing that was really big in my household, you know, and so I remember having access to tapes. I was introduced to sex at a very early age. And so it's interesting because some of the conversations that I have in my 40s with my husband are way different than anything that I would have ever thought to even talk about, you know, things that I'm constantly evolving because I had to almost go through a period of unlearning what I had learned for so long, you know. And so some things you do talk about, but it's not just you may talk about, or you may have brought to the conversation, but when you are merging, you know, two people together, where I was at a place at a time in my life and where you were at a time in your life, and we're trying to bring these things together, some of the conversations could even be offensive, you know. How do you know what to say about what I like or what I don't like? Because it's not that easy to present to someone what you don't like sexually, and this is your spouse, because I mean that can do a lot of damage. They have to go through a process of healing, being able to receive that, you know, before you could even get to now what do we do about it, you know. And that was even a process I can speak for myself because my husband is not here, but I brought a lot of junk to my bedroom. You know, I brought a lot of things to the bedroom. And so when you have experiences, there comes expectations, you know. And so we have to, you know, not saying what we have to talk about, but there is so much more that comes when it comes about when we talk about the discussion before we even hit the bed. And for some of us, we might have hit the bed running, but then we get to a point where, you know, there's some other things now. life is really happening, and it's not just about sex. So now the conversations really have to happen, because for some reason our world and sex, we've been doing it for a long time, but they're just not aligning. So how do we start having, when do we start noticing what conversations need to be had, not just how often?
I love that. And
I,
that's, oh, go ahead, Carrie. Then I'm going to share what I think it ties in a whole lot. If you can, don't forget your thought, Carrie. I just want to
Mhm.
show it, what someone shared on here. Thanks to Pamela from Facebook. My pastor coaches that one of the things he and his wife do, even after 20 plus years in marriage, is a weekly meeting where they ask each other the following questions. Number one, have I offended you this week? Number two, do you have any unmet needs? Number three, what are your priorities for the week? It's a check-in. We're checking in, making sure we're good. Are we okay? And so I think that ties in. If you need a place to start, let's start there. Let's start with just some basic questions in terms of, and then praying that will lead to further conversation. But the key is to start. But go ahead, Carrie. Go ahead and have your.
Yeah, no problem. I really appreciate what both Sean and Nicole said. I'm gonna offer a perspective that is unfortunate, but is true as far as how often couples should talk or check in about their sex life. And I think that it depends on two major things. The first one being the psychosexual health of the couple, and the second one being the importance of sex in the relationship. There are some relationships in which sex is not something that they need that often. And if they are talking about it at a higher frequency than necessary, that could be problematic. That could actually lead to issues of frustration. And that kind of ties into also the psychosexual health of the couple. If you have one person that is highly motivated to have a regular sex conversations, and then another person who is struggling with the concept of discussing their sexuality, perhaps because of something that happened in their past or just their level of comfort, then you end up causing damage rather than closeness. So I think it's unfortunate, but I think you really have to be careful when you are going to bring up this conversation with your significant other, being considerate of the issues that they may have in the past, and also being considerate of of just basically the climate of the relationship.
Absolutely. And you were going to say something, Dr. Nicole?
No, I was just saying it was this, he summed it up. So it was such an excellent point. And that's not something that, once again, that we don't really check in. I mean, think about it. When I, do counseling, prior to performing a wedding for people, that's not something that necessarily comes up. You might talk about sex on a really surface level, but just knowing, I have in counseling, and this is like postmarital counseling, those are where that's the time that the issues really arise, but sometimes, these things they come up once the damage is done, and you're in a place where you have to try to, figure out where did it go wrong, and now navigate, how to get back to the point of, when the issue arises, and how do we fix it at that point. And for some reason, it just, as I reflect, and of course, we can only look at things through our own personal experiences, whether professional or personal, but some of the stuff just don't come out in that way. Even when I think about, the opportunity to be on a panel like this. I didn't even think the conversation would go here. Thank God it did, but when we say let's talk about sex, then you think, this is what we're going to do. We're just going to talk about sex, but there's so many layers to it. It's so much damage associated with it. It's a very fragile thing, and we don't think about it, how it impacts us mentally, how it impacts us spiritually, how it impacts us emotionally, and then that pours out into our marriages. So this is like such a deep conversation, and I think it goes far deeper than even married couples know.
Absolutely. Yeah. Agreed. Absolutely agree. And I was going to say that I think that segues into the next point of sex outside of the bedroom. What does that really look like? I am so big on that. I think that's everything, because it's, to me, the most intimate thing that two people can do is to be physically intimate. And as a person of faith, I would say it would be sex and pray. And so in your prayer time as a person of faith, I think that's a very powerful thing to do. And with sex, it's a very intimate and deep and profound thing to do, to the point, y'all, that I was thinking about as I was looking at my children. I have young children, two young children, and the fact that there are people who take sex and use it as a heinous crime against children, or children are exposed to this earlier than their little minds. It's not just their bodies, that's important, but their minds can really grasp. And even more so, those same children, whether they have gone through some stuff or they haven't, need to be able to grow and to explore, and hormones and all the other great jazz that comes along the way as they mature and become who they're going to be, and now have to come to an understanding of what does sex mean, what does it look like, what do I do, what am I supposed to do, how am I supposed to do, how am I supposed to be for myself, for this person. It can be a lot of pressure. And so I think that's where the communication that we're talking about, y'all, can really help. It can really just ease a lot of the pressure if we just start really just talking. Let's talk some more about this stuff, so that way we can say, okay, it's out on the table. We're literally showing our hands and saying, hey, this is what we're doing. This is what I'm working with. Let me see what you're working with. It's not about, no, I can't see, you can't see my hands, I don't want you to win. No, if we win when we win. You win, I win when we win. So we have to show those hands. Basically, it's telling your partner, let me see what you're working with, and I'm gonna show you what I'm working with too. But just to tie in the what does it mean? What does it look like when it comes to sex starts outside of the bedroom?
I guess I'll start out with that one.
Okay.
The things that I wrote down for this question, is that there are certain aspects, and I got a lot of this from a Psychology Today article that I'd be happy to share. If I'll share it later on, but unconditional positive regard is necessary to start with. You have to have appreciation for everything that the person does, not just something that is sex related. Just even if somebody takes out the trash, it's something done. Oh, well, they're supposed to do that. Yes, but even if they're supposed to do it, the fact that they did it should be recognized, because there's so many people that don't do what they're supposed to do, and that is so damaging to the relationship. So acknowledge everything. There has to be trust and vulnerability. There has to be that affectionate touch to warm up to each other, good humor, positive sexual conversation. And I don't mean dirty talk. I mean just a positive view towards sex, as opposed to a negative verbal expression of sex. There are so many people that are wanting, with good intentions, wanting to discuss the things that do happen in their bedroom, but they're asking a question that is hard to answer. They would ask it in a way of saying, or they might say something along the lines of, well, I'm not really good at that, or I don't think I don't think you're enjoying it when I do this. Now you can't have an open conversation if you're the other person, because because at that moment you're trying to make sure that their emotions are taken care of, because they're already approaching it from a negative point of view. However, if the question was more of a, how could I do this better for you? Or what are the things about it that you like or don't like? If
Mm.
you, or rather the things that I do really well are the things that I can work on to make even a bit better for you. Because the reality of it is, for the most part, the acts of sex are customizable from person to person as far as their preferences. One person may like something that another person hates. But if it's a conversation beforehand, then it builds more anticipation for the act, and you end up having a better experience.
Okay, absolutely. I agree. And to tie in, unless anyone else wanted to share, I wanted to show you all an infographic just to give, I believe in practicality. And if we can give some practical tools to the people and to each other, because we still need help. At least I'll say I still need help. I can't speak for y'all. I still need help. So I think it's always great to share. But I don't know if Sean or Dr. Nicole, you wanted to add anything else to sex outside, starting outside the bedroom?
Well, I remember being in a Bible study once, and we were talking. It was a couples Bible study, and we were talking about what does it look like starting outside of the bedroom. And so for different couples, it was different things. So for some couples, it was, did you do your duties for the house that week? Because that's something that makes me happy. I can't come to bed and lay with you if I'm pissed off because you didn't pay a bill, or you didn't, do the laundry, or you haven't cooked for me the whole week. I know that, two things that adjust my husband's mood is food and sex, and so therefore, one might cover the other, but, it's gonna be better if he got breakfast all week, a hot breakfast. I know that's what he likes, and so, sometimes we have to, it depends, it varies for different people. Me, I have learned over as I get older, which I want to say this, and I think that some of the, I don't know how old anybody is, but sex changed for me. What sex is for me in my 40s is way different than what it was for me in my 20s, and so a lot of it is, what am I carrying? Like, we can have a conversation about sex, but if I'm carrying an issue that's not even sex related to the bedroom, then I might turn on my side, and I'm talking about all the way on the opposite side, not snuggling up to you, letting you know I want some on the side, but just on the side, and I am just so distant from you. And it's not that there could be a part of me that physically might want it, but mentally I'm not connected because we did not finish, or we did not resolve an issue that wasn't necessarily sex related, but now it is spilling into this issue that we are about to have because of sex, because it hasn't been resolved. And so, it is also, what happens about the conversation outside of the bedroom. In that same Bible study, I used to tell people, if I was satisfied sexually the night before or the morning before, my husband got a great breakfast. You know what I'm trying to say? If it was mediocre, he'll get a bowl of cereal, And so it's
Thank you for being honest.
I am. So, it ties in. We can't think that it is really just about, and I believe that when we get to a point of becoming adults, getting to a place where we are in life, sex just is not just about sex anymore. Sex is just not about sex. And I mean, sometimes we need to bring a little bit of that dating sex into the relationship. I believe that's something that I had to catch myself on, even just recently. I was sitting down with my husband. We're not having sex. It wasn't a sexual thing. But I said, you know what? I'm really sitting here like a wife. But if I was sitting here as a girlfriend, I would be doing some other things to him. I would be doing some exciting things to him. But right now I'm doing some routine things. Why? Because I'm his wife, And so I'm like, he probably missed that girlfriend, because this whole experience would have been different if I just didn't feel like, he's here, he ain't going nowhere.
Mm.
But if my
Mm.
mind was still in a place of, I want this man to marry me, I'm trying to show him why I'm better than the next female, then, that whole
Wow.
interaction would have
Yeah.
been completely different. And
Wow.
so, there's a lot to this thing here. So
Mm.
I'll
Yeah.
pass it on.
I want to say something on that, but I want Sean to go ahead first.
No, say your thing, because
Okay.
that yeah.
All right. You touched on a couple of things that really brought some important things to mind. One, if you are interested, let us know. Let us know.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
because honestly, you think it is commonly taught that it's extremely easy for a guy to get into the mood.
Mm.
But the reality of it is sometimes we're just like, oh, she's ready? Okay, dang, I need to wash up, I need to brush my teeth, I need to did I make sure all the doors are locked? Where the kids at?
He got
Where
kids. Yeah.
Yes.
no,
Kids.
just let us know. And or it's a situation of, all right, I need to get my head out of all of this stuff and then focus on this, because guys can get in their head when it comes to sex. We can really get in our head, and it changes the way that we participate.
Mm.
That being said, the second one is, don't tell us you're interested and then change your mind. That hurts. It hurts a lot.
I don't mean to laugh. It's the way you say
No,
it.
I'm not saying that you don't have a right to change your mind, but or just actually a better way of saying it is, don't say you're interested and not be available.
Mm.
Because what that does is that, I don't know, it's like, if things are going to change that quickly, if you know they're in the mood, you're kind of afraid to say anything. You're kind of afraid to do anything, because if it's a switch that flips that quickly,
You don't want to mess it up.
you don't want to mess it up, because you don't know when that switch turns back on again.
Right. Wow.
That's good. That's good.
And,
Wow.
and to tie that in, initiate. Please initiate. Please
Please
initiate.
initiate.
Please
Before
initiate.
you oh,
Look,
go ahead.
I just wanted to I'm such a visual person sometimes, and what I thought about was when you said, if you say that you're interested, and I'm paraphrasing, pretty like, be interested, continue it. And it made me think about when people are dating and you pick up the phone for that booty call, and it's like, you don't want to have this person drive all the way over to where you are, or if you were in New York City, like, let's get on a bus and a train, get there, and all of a sudden you change your mind, right? And so even though we think about that would lead to some serious disappointment, right? But I guess it's the same thing in the bedroom, right? Like, maybe it started at work, on a drive home, passing by downstairs, but then you get to bed and then it's like, I never once again thought about what that might look like. And it doesn't change that you have things going on, because while you were dating and this person was in their place and you were in your place, you still had things that you had to prepare for, get together, think about, to get in order before you both came together. But more times than not, it didn't stop you. I never really heard of too many booty calls going wrong. Like, you know what? I'm not in the mood any longer. Don't come. Usually they come, they are completed.
Mission accomplished.
Mission accomplished. But we lose that. We do tend to lose that. And is it because are we taking our spouses for granted?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I did forget one, and it kind of ties into what you said. Yeah, it does kind of seem like sometimes we're being taken for granted or not being considered. I'm going to say one of the things that I forgot to say previously is be sexy. And I'm not talking about anything about keeping in shape or doing your hair. I'm just talking about being sexy, because one of the worst things that can happen in your relationship is that your significant other walks by naked and you stop paying attention. That's
Mm.
because at some point you're like, you know what,
Houston never
that's
forget.
not even for me right now. That's not even on the table. So I'm gonna focus on something that has something to offer me right now. And
Sad
it's a
stuff.
very dark place, a very sad place to be, but it happens.
I want to just go to Sean. If you have a thought, please don't forget it. Hold on to it. I just want to acknowledge, I hope I'm saying your name right, Ifua. Her comment, you have to start throughout the week. And this ties in with the infographic I'm about to show y'all. Romance your partner, know their love language, and satisfy that before hitting the bedroom. You have to preheat an oven before you can cook. And to go back to what Carrie, also what you were saying about the interesting, Sean, don't forget your point.
Oh,
That
He'll never
you
forget.
but that if you go ahead and to let you know that we're interested, I think it's also important to put out there for some of us, if we're speaking of a woman and a man in that type of relationship, and as a man you're saying, woman, please let me know you're interested, don't leave me out in the dark. We also have to speak to her language and how she speaks and how she expresses that stuff. Does she have the wherewithal, the courage, as far as her culture, her background, her understanding? Is she able to separate that? Because for a lot of women, I know I'm one of those. I was taught to, and not just in a sexual thing, but just in general, as a woman, a man pursues me. I think we
mm,
talked about that before, y'all, where I told y'all about, like, my dad taught me I'm the prize. The man is running a race for me, and he's running, and he's got to come and get me. And so I never run after a man. I'm never going to pursue him. But that can then also tie into, for a woman who may have a similar mentality, I'm also not going to initiate because I'm the woman. So you have to come and pursue me. Like, it's not okay. It might be, if you're a person of faith, you might think it's ungodly, it's inappropriate, it's his job. I'm just supposed to be here and look cute and make sure I have everything in place and do my part. And his part is to come and find me. I'm not saying it's right, but I am saying that I think that there may be many women who may have that mentality. And I think what you need to do with that is be mindful about, again, communication. I hate to sound like a broken record, but come up with a way that you can speak that's comfortable to speak to your partner and to tell them you're interested without feeling like you have to be out of character, without you feeling like you're being a prostitute. Nobody's saying you have to be anything but yourself. But
mm.
marriage or committed relationships or being in a relationship is not just about you, or you could be by yourself. You don't need to be in this relationship. So you have to be mindful about coming out of that's not who I am. That's not what I do. That's not what I was taught. Stay present, stay present, stay present. So I'm going to go to Sean, and then I'm going to pull up the infographic. Go ahead, Sean.
All right. So that was beautiful. And I think that that ties in a lot to what I was going to say as well. Um, the question was like, sex starts outside the bedroom,
Mhm.
and what does that imply? That ties into so many things. If you grew up listening, well, especially like 90s hip hop, like when the rap era just like boomed, the
Mhm.
rap industry boomed, I should say. Um, that changed what sex looked like for so many of us, right? So the ways that we talk about sex, what's supposed to happen in sex. So it went from like making love in the 70s, 60s and stuff like that to
Mhm.
now I just want to hit it, right? And we're not looking at women as the objects of our affection. They are now freaks. And what I'm saying, they hoes and they bees, they this, that, and the third. And this has always been a thing of like men using women as conquests. If that's the era that you grew up in, and you were around, prostitution in your neighborhood, if you've been exposed to those things, then like sex is literally just, it's not a form of affirming a bond. It's just a conquest, or it's just like this thing to assert my dominance to a woman, and also assert myself in this hierarchy of like the male totem pole. So like how many chicks am I getting with compared to Tommy? I know that, when we were teenagers, like if you were a virgin, like people laughed at you.
Yep.
Oh boy, you still a virgin, and like that was just something that you just did not, you would never, you would say that you were on food stamps
before you would say
crack before you admitted to being a virgin.
Yeah, sure.
So like for a lot of dudes, especially in my neighborhood, and just kids in general, we threw our virginity away. Threw it away. Had no, it didn't matter who it was, it didn't matter how long it lasted, it didn't matter, for some of us, it didn't matter if we had protection or not. It didn't matter where it was. It didn't matter if the woman was satisfied at the time. It didn't even matter if it none of it mattered. We just wanted to get rid of it, because we know that at this point, this is what's going to make me cool. I can finally get this monkey off my back, and move on with my life. We can move on to something. Now I got that done. But then that opened up a whole nother can of worms, because sex is addictive, right? You never want and you just continuously, like just chase that high. So it is the culmination of things. Like what music are you listening to? What movies are you watching? What conversations are you having at work? Who are your friends? You know what I'm saying? So other than, yes, the romancing portion is absolutely 100% correct. But also, just like with worship, those outside influences, they do come to bite you in the butt. You know what I'm saying? So like when you finally do get with your wife, instead of me thinking about romancing her, I'm listening, Snoop Dogg comes to my mind. You know what I'm saying? And we got some chicks in the living room getting it on, and they ain't leaving till 6 a.m. If that's what's been constantly fed onto me, then my wife is no longer someone that I'm building with through this act. She now becomes a means to an end.
Wow.
And that whole love and respect portion is negated, because I'm not doing the work myself, to be, like you said, to be present in the moment, and I think so much is lost, because like Dr. Nicole said, it's such a deep conversation, that and it's so nuanced, but we were only taught to look at sex in one way. And a lot of times it was the wrong way.
Yeah. And nobody taught us about the internal influences. We
Right.
Even if they talked about the external, they didn't talk about what happens in your head sexually.
Yeah.
Especially from a guy perspective. I mean, that's a big thing to unpack, but I think it's probably better to go ahead with what you wanted to show us, Jen.
Yeah, let me go ahead and do that, y'all. I want to make sure it's seen. We get to that. Just give me 1 second here. Share screen. There we go. Okay, I'm getting this technology thing. I'm getting it, y'all. All right, can y'all see this?
Yes.
Okay, so I am, and you see it well now too? It's fine. You can still see it?
I can.
Okay. So basically, it speaks to how to speak your partner's love language. And the five love languages, there are five love languages, and it's by the psychologist, renowned author, speaker, Dr. Gary Chapman. And the five love languages are right here, y'all. So it's words of affirmation, there's one. Physical touch is your second one. Your third one is receiving gifts. Quality time is number four. Acts of service is number five. Which one are you? How to communicate. If your partner's love language is words of affirmation, that means you need to encourage, affirm, appreciate, and listen actively. Actions to take. You can send an unexpected note, text, or card. Things to avoid, not recognizing or appreciating effort. So I won't read through each one. I'll just read one more, but maybe it's acts of service. I know that's mine. How to communicate, let them know you are wanting to help to lighten their load. So if you're the partner who has a partner whose love language is acts of service, then actions to take would be make them breakfast or dinner, go out of your way to help with chores. Things to avoid, lacking follow through on small and large tasks. So you can see it there yourselves, y'all. It's actually an infographic I got from believe the I'm trying to see who the person is. I believe they're called Ladies First, but I shared it from their page. And basically, the five love languages comes from Dr. Gary Chapman, but they came up with how to go ahead and to apply those five love languages in those various ways. So tell me, y'all, what y'all think about this infographic right here. Do you think that there is some truth to it? Does it make sense? Is it a good tool?
I like it. I wish that that under words of affirmation and things to avoid that they added focusing on your failures
Mm.
because that's generally expressed verbally, and every single time you like a word of affirmation, the worst possible thing that you could do is not just not say a word of affirmation, but instead to do the opposite, which is to say something about their failures. Like talk about how, oh, I thought that you would be able to do this, but it looks like you weren't able to do it after all. So I'm gonna have to call the repairman. Ouch. Um,
Mm.
ouch.
Mhm.
Ouch. Ouch.
Yeah, yeah.
And also for things like quality time, I wish they would have added to avoid offering quality time but then being unavailable for it.
Hmm. So your partner offering and saying, "Hey, let's go ahead and make a date, or let's go away for the weekend," and then they turn around and say, "Oh, but this weekend doesn't work." Like, how would that look? What does that look like, Carrie?
Uh, to
I
use
can give you an
the
example.
thank you.
Please.
So I, in my experience, and this is something that my wife and I have talked about. Like, she knows that I like when she does initiate, and of course, life happens, and I try my best, and I think I do a pretty good job of not getting bent out of shape. But like, don't send me the "oh, I'm going to give it to you" text, and then I have to be the one to remind you about the text that you sent, right?
Mm.
Or
Yeah,
you
I'm not even
forget,
gonna do that.
right? Because I'm not going to remind you. Like, you send that sign. Oh, when you get home, da 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 da, and then you get home and they do this, they do that, they do this, they do that, they do that. We watch some TV and then we go to bed. And I'm like, but what the you had said, right, but you had, and
Mm,
so that thing, that's what he's talking about.
gotcha.
and it's especially fun if they cuddle up to you
No,
after
it's
they
not.
go into
Don't
bed.
don't don't lie on a Sunday. It is
That
not
was
fun.
that was
It is
sarcasm. That
not,
was sarcasm.
it is not fun.
So you
Well,
would
can I say
say,
something to the cuddling
yes,
thing,
please
please?
do.
I just want to say, and this might be, me putting myself out there. There have been days where the intentions were there, the desire was there. But by the time you hit that bed, you might have cuddled up and then it was all snores at that point. It's not necessarily intentional sometimes. Um,
That's fine, but then
uh,
when it turns into we never speak of it again, that's
right. Well, no, and you're right. I think that it should be, and I could say that in my marriage, it is something because that'd be something that's mutual. Like, yeah, we just woke up this morning and we just forgot about last night or something like that. But then that kind of goes back to having those conversations. Is the couple having that conversation? Are you in a place where you can have that conversation? And one of the things, if I may say this real quick, when I was looking at the chart about how to speak your partner's love language, and like I said, I always have to paint these pictures in my head, and I'm like, yeah, I can see that being the things that we do in preparation, the things that we do maybe to follow up, but are we in some marriages, are we making love or are we just having sex?
Mm, mm.
Because they can really be two totally different things,
Oh
even
yeah.
in a marriage. And so it's like, yeah, if you have one partner who wants to, make love and you have another partner who want to have sex, or two partners who are just, they're really their sex buddies, or whatever, you don't know where people are necessarily. We have a marriage ministry, and in our marriage ministry we give couples assignments every month, and their intimacy assignment really has nothing to do with sex itself. If it leads up to sex, that's between the couple, but it's never sex. It is the smallest gestures of intimacy, and it's really staring in your partner's eyes for 5 minutes undisturbed. It is really kissing passionately while naked, because you would be surprised how many married couples do not kiss one another.
Mm.
And we're not talking about the peck on the mouth, but we're talking about how many are you really still tonguing your spouse down. I mean, putting them upside the wall like you did when it was forbidden,
Mhm,
but it was
yeah.
also
mhm, mhm.
exciting,
I call
you
that peck
know.
on the lips a high that peck. I call that's like a high five with your lips. I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not your buddy.
Right. But really still in those moments, and and doing those, just those little things, like, are we making love, and because it doesn't necessarily have to be that person's language, right? Because one of the things about the love languages, and we speak on it a lot of times, is that most people speak in their own language. A lot of people, when they explore and understand what a person's love language is, it's still like a whole nother lesson in how do you communicate that in a way that the other person is going to receive it. If you are an acts of I would say, if you're a words of affirmation person and I'm a physical touch person, you might see that and want to just keep talking to me, talking to me, talking to me, talking to me, and not touching me. I'm never going to receive your love, and you think you're pouring your love out on me. And so even when it comes to sex and the type of sex that we have, and things like that, the way you might even have sex or make love just might not, it might be sex to me and not love, and I'm looking for love making, never receiving it. And so now when you say, well, why am I not showing up for it? It could be because I'm not getting anything from it. Maybe
Mm.
I don't want you to get on top of me and do your business tonight.
Mm.
Is your partner being satisfied? Is your partner being fulfilled? Are you one? And I know that kind of goes into our conversations, but think about it. If you have been a young man or a young woman having sex so young, and you've been taught to have sex a certain way, at what point does that deprogramming happen? And now you learn what it's like with your partner. Because how many people want to go into saying, I really don't know, I never learned that, or teach me something, and I'm open to it. Like I believe the conversation was had earlier. We don't want to bruise egos with certain things that we say, because then we won't ever revisit that conversation again, or we'll try to avoid that conversation happening. And that's a lot. That's something that even in my own marriage, we had to really learn and show up as completely different people. Completely different people. This experience had to develop and evolve into a whole different experience than anything that I had ever had in my life. Where funny coming in, I thought I was ready because I had so much experience prior, but that experience meant nothing. Nothing. And so we went through a very difficult time of realizing what's going on, having to unlearn and be willing to learn more about it.
And I think that thank y'all so much. Thank you, Dr. Nicole, because I think that you brought the next point in my perspective that is key is seeing your relationship, your monogamous. I'm speaking on monogamous relationships, y'all. So if it's not a marriage, you're in a committed relationship, you're in a long-term relationship where you have decided it's just you and this person, then you want to be mindful about that clean slate. Like, I know about you got your stuff, I got my stuff. Remember, we showing each other's hands, the card, the deck, but then the clean slate. So that means we have to now create our own rules of engagement. And I can't talk. Own rules of engagement. Our rules of engagement, sexually and emotionally, physically. What does that look like? And that's for Cindy and Johnny. It doesn't work for Lucy and Max because it's not Lucy and Max's relationship. And even if, let's say, you're in counseling, or as Dr. Nicole was talking about with her ministry, and there is a tool that is given, one of the key things is that you just try. It's all a trial and error, because if it doesn't work for you, then the next one might. It doesn't mean that you sit there and you say, well, this didn't work, that didn't work, we tried that, and that's it. And I'm not delving into anything else. It just may not be what works for Lucy and Johnny. And so we've got to keep working at it. But the two people have to be willing to do the work. If you're not, then what are we really doing here?
And the two people also.
What are you writing on that slate? Yeah, go ahead, Karen.
The two people also need to be open to the work and open to the other person's view on sex and sexuality. One of the things that bother me, and I don't know if everyone feels this way, but I definitely feel this way. One of the things that really bother me is that when two people that love and respect each other are going to have sex or have a sexual talk or any type of sexual interaction, and one of them feels like there's an action that would be considered degrading. I don't understand that. Like, to me, it's like, okay, does this person respect you in all other areas of life? Okay, so, but in this situation, it's degrading because of what? Because someone had told you that it was degrading? That someone told you that it's a way to disrespect you? No, this is someone, like, especially from a lot of the things that people say are degrading. I'm not saying all or most. I'm saying a lot of the things are generally sex acts that are catered towards the man. And it's like, why is that degrading? Why would this act be degrading if it brings me pleasure and it allows me to connect to you on another level? I don't understand that.
You're saying, why would the act, for in a woman's perspective, be considered to be degrading if that man who's suggesting or proposing this is an act I'd like for us to do, and I'm respectful, loving, giving, generous, to loving towards you throughout most of the relationship, and I'm asking you this one thing, you should be able to trust my intentions for you, that they're not. Is that what you're saying?
Yes,
Am I
but
losing you?
I'm not trying to say that you have to like it. If you don't like it, then I don't like it. But
Okay.
if we're doing it together as a couple, a couple that loves and respects each other, it is not degrading. There is no degradation in a loving and a respectful marriage interaction or relationship interaction.
Well, can I say something
Go
to
ahead.
that? It might be, it because then we got to go back to what are you bringing in, because it just not might not be with your previous partners. Was the person abused sexually,
Hmm.
and it's not even
Right.
just and even if, I mean, that is definitely a thing, but even if it's just what a person have been told,
Agree.
moving right, when it comes to, I mean, if it's a thing like, do you perform oral sex on your husband, it's something that he could really really enjoy. But if you were someone who grew up and you were told that, respectable women don't do that, or something like that, that could be like, at what point does it go from, and this is kind of going back to what I was saying, where does that happen to say, okay, I know you're my husband, but I've had maybe 20, 30 years of this, in my head, that if I do this, then I'm not a respectable woman. And I'm trying, I don't think that is just as easy as your husband now saying this is a safe space. This is between us. And so then, it takes a lot of, one of the things, it takes a lot of trust. One of the issues I don't think we have really kind of gotten on just yet is about trust when it comes to married couples. And it's not just about trust and infidelity, right?
Mhm.
Because trust, I mean, there's so many areas of trust when it comes to married couples. So then it's like, well, even if this is something that I'm not comfortable with, can I trust you? Maybe it's a thing of, you've had this before. Do I look at your previous relationships and don't want to turn out like that? Maybe I'm trying to stand out. Maybe there's so much that comes into that,
Yes.
but once again, it comes into learning about the person, learning about knowing who you're laying with, knowing before we ever get to this point of, it's okay to do it or it's okay not to do it. And then sometimes people, they might try, that might come into that whole, why I'm not showing up in a bedroom.
Hmm.
Maybe it's hard to show up if I know that I'm really not going to satisfy you when I get there,
Mm.
or when I know that I want to, in my mind, I could say, like, in my head, I could really be, I could listen to certain music. I know that's not everybody's thing, but I could listen to certain music. It could get me going, so when I get home, I'm thinking, oh, let me text my husband because I'm gonna give him this lap dance, in my head, because
Mhm.
this song got me going. But then knowing I'm gonna look like a fool when I get there because I really can't dance. And so then, so then, not wanting to show up, or
Hmm.
now that I'm in front of you, or what has been said, or if it's a thing where, what is that response? Is it okay? Like, okay, you did it, but it's okay, or maybe you scraped a little bit, or just whatever the conversation is, and it's just like, I want to show up, but I don't know how to show up. And how do do you have that kind of relationship with your partner to say, I need you to move a little to the left, or I need you to
Right.
use left
Hmm.
feet,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
it's not just about, do we do it or not do it, and
Hmm.
Mhm.
so it's like, there's just a lot that goes into it, just a
Yeah.
whole lot.
And
And
I
then after
appreciate you
that,
fleshing that out. I appreciate you fleshing that out. But what I have to apologize for is that I didn't preface what I said with um cognitively. I don't understand how cognitively it can be considered degrading, or I can understand it being uncomfortable. And as you were saying, there needs to be that comfort level where you can say, okay, maybe a little bit more this way, maybe a little bit more that way, or even just, I'm not ready to try that yet, and we can get to that at some point, maybe. I don't know
Mhm.
when.
Mhm.
Let's build this together. Let's see how we can build it, and we'll do our best, keeping the other in mind, while the other is keeping our concerns and whatever the case may be in mind as well.
But can I also say to add, is as far as trauma, because that's what we're speaking of. If the person may have a history of trauma, being compassionate to that, it doesn't mean you excuse or you condone that the person can just have loose reign and they dictate and they get to choose, and there's no shift in the relationship because we're just going to walk around eggshells because we know Lucy has a history of trauma. That's not healthy for Johnny. He's not going to hang. He's not going to be able to be maintained and to be able to maintain himself and the relationship well. And so essentially, I think it's about going to a place of saying, hey, Lucy, how about you consider counseling, speaking to a person of faith that you respect, that you may need support with, a mentor, whomever. Do you need to go to a class? How can I support you in that? And then also, if it's not even to go to that aspect where eventually Lucy comes over, because I think even if cognitively it's not something that makes that doesn't make sense, or it does make sense to her, like it's logical, but the emotional stuff is penetrating and seeping into the cognitive. So I can't really be here because I'm over here. That's where my stuff is. That's where what happened to me is. So it's taking over. But quickly, because I know we're running on time, y'all. But just to speak to also the fact that, could you then maneuver into another direction where it may not be that particular thing that triggers Lucy and makes her feel like, nah, it's too much. But now, Johnny, can we try to think about something else that's outside of the box? And can we, something that we're meeting each other halfway, we're meeting in the middle, but that's conversation, communication, that's us exploring, doing whatever it is that we need to do in order to get to that place where we win. We win, that we are going to that place of climax and height together, not just one person or another. With that, want to wrap up with one last question, y'all. I was praying we could get through them all, but here we go. Here it is. The chemistry, the vibe, the just the cohesion. I love it. I'm so glad we're having this conversation. If you had to break down the attributes of a healthy sex life into 5 parts: A, amount of time; B, foreplay, that's the kissing, massaging, rubbing, groping; C, energy; D, communication; and E, orgasm, what percentage would you give each part regarding its importance? So I'm going to say it again, or should I put it in the chat? Y'all want me to put it in the chat?
Good. I got it. Sean, you want to start this one off?
Yes, sir.
Sure.
I'll
I've got the email pulled up here. So we're giving percentages. I mean, this is, and I don't want to be a punk and just like give like the generic answer. Oh, everything is so important,
Punk.
I think that it's just helpful. It's important to know that, like Nicole was alluding to earlier, like sometimes you don't want the whole meal, right? You don't want Ruth Chris. Sometimes you just need to get a 4 for 4 and go on to sleep, And so I think that it just depends on the situation and the circumstance behind it.
Mm.
But I guess we can qualify it by saying, like, in a perfect world where you have all the time in the world, you don't have to worry about locking the door because of the kids. And I think that we should just throw out A, because it's going to take as much time as it's going to take. Foreplay should definitely, I mean, like, that's the fun in it, right?
Mhm.
That's the preheating of the oven. So I would give it about I would say I would give it like 50%. Because
Foreplay.
yeah, 50%.
Mm-hmm.
The energy, these are kind of weird categories, because I think, like, the energy would also, like, play into it, because you can have, like, foreplay, but if the energy ain't there, then it's kind of like dumb play, like, it kind of, like, defeats the purpose. So the energy would have to definitely be there. So maybe, I don't know if I'm going to get 100% on here. My math is going to be all wrong.
Or just put them in order, Sean. Don't do a
Okay.
percentage.
All right. Cool.
So what's number one?
The energy has to be there, right? Because it's no one's. It ain't. It's not going to be fun if it's just one sided. The energy, then foreplay, communication, and I think that orgasm is like huge, right? It's gotta, even though it might come last, it's gotta come, right? Because what's the point in starting a race?
No pun intended. Yeah.
Right. No point in starting a race if you're not going to finish. So you definitely have to yeah, I would say that.
Okay. I like that list. What about you all? Dr. Nicole, Carrie, what y'all got?
So I was really trying to do the percentages, right?
You're a good student.
Yeah, I was really trying to do the percentages here. And I would have to say, all right, hold on, I'm still figuring. Okay, so math was never my thing, but I would say that I gave orgasm a 45%. Because out of 100, so I gave orgasm a 45%. Because one of the things that I have learned is that it can, well, we don't have time for this conversation. We just really don't. But it's up there, okay? But you can really get to places where even if you don't get there, it could be so fulfilling. Okay. So sometimes I'll just say if something's cut short for whatever amount of time, some things could be very fulfilling, just like foreplay and that physical touch act can be so fulfilling before it leads to actual, intercourse and orgasm. And so I just gave orgasm a 45%. I gave energy a 40%, because you have to have the energy there, in order to carry it out. So whether that be to go towards the foreplay, putting the time in, having the communication, your energy has to be there, right? And so then I gave, and like I said, I gave 10% to communication, because we have to know some things. We have to have the communication about it. I gave, believe it or not, I gave 3% to foreplay because, depending on if you got it down pat, you probably don't have to spend a whole lot of time on it, right? And so, and time 2%. And no pun intended on it too, but I have learned that you can really have an action-packed session in 2 and 2 because, and that is something that I have learned, if I can say this really quickly. Years ago, while I was probably in my early 30s, I went to go visit a friend of mine, friends who are a couple.
Okay.
And I have always been very open about having sexual conversations. And they found the need to tell me about how sex between them is very quick now. And they have learned each other's bodies to a point that it takes no time. And they are excited about that. And, being young and you're still dealing with younger people who, believe that it's all about the time. Because then I guess maybe the men can attest to this. You would never admit that sex could take 30 minutes, and I'm being probably generous there. You would think that you have to have it fun. Yeah, you would think that you have to have these marathons, but after a while that can get tiring. If you're not achieving anything, that's tiring. All you're doing is wasting time. You're burning all of that energy that you were bringing in. So it's about the quality of time in which you're putting into it. So it's whatever it takes to get the job done.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until I got to a certain place. And so now being a woman in my 40s, and which I was excited about because now I've reached sexual peak. What sexual peak is so different than what I ever thought it was gonna be. But when I say to know yourself and to have someone who knows you, a lot of that other stuff is like a very small percentage of it. And I mean, to be so in sync that orgasm is everything and is really high up there, it's so fulfilling. And so that's where my percentages came in at. So
shifting my perspective with that. Thank you. Cario, what would you say?
I went straight punk with it. I gave 100% to everything. Sorry, John. but before I get into that, really quickly, what Dr. Nicole was saying is so important about the time. We were, I don't know if Sean can speak to this, but we were taught that.
Yeah.
All right, the longer it is, the better you are.
Y'all know what Missy Elliott said? She don't want no one minute in.
Man.
Now, don't get me wrong. If there is, I'm not saying that premature orgasm is not an issue. What I'm saying is that the actual work towards orgasm generally happens in less than 7 minutes. Right. All the rest is activity like foreplay or whatever. I had the misfortune of one time, and I don't know, from a guy's physiological perspective, oftentimes the longer it takes, the least likely it is for you to achieve orgasm. Is that okay? So I was unfortunate enough to have an experience. This was when I was in college a long time ago, where it went on for hours, but nobody got anything out of it. No. And all you got was tired. And and you honestly, I felt
throw that away.
Yeah, I felt more like a fool for that situation than I would have if I hadn't lasted very long. But now going into the percentages, you said importance, and that's how I took it.
Okay.
And the way that I took it is that the amount of time is important, but is not quantifiable. And that's how I looked at all of them. It's important, but it's not quantifiable. You can have that 2-minute quickie and it be what you need. It be that thing right there.
Right.
You know? And it could be lovemaking instead of just sex in that short amount of time. Same thing for foreplay. You can actually enter into it, and foreplay can last for hours and hours. There's this thing called edging that's supposed to be really, really good. And then it really heightens the energy. But then at the same time, if you're ready now and the other person ready now, let's do it now.
Yeah.
So there's that. And as far as energy, I took energy to mean something different. I took it in the context of how I took A and B. Energy being the actual physical energy exuded. And it could be that vigorous lovemaking, or it could be that slow, easy stuff. As long as you're putting your full effort into it, your full attention into it, your full self into it, I think 100% of that is awesome. Um, Communication is often overlooked during the sex act. It's usually something that is looked at before and after, but sometimes that conversation during is what really brings it out. That that conversation where you might be locked on the cusp of fulfillment, but then the communication of the other person expressing how well they're enjoying themselves will be the thing that sets you over.
Catapults. Yep.
Oh, wait.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's all.
Fan
Yeah.
yourselves, ladies. Fan yourselves, ladies.
Yes. It's
Just got
highly
hot in here.
important there.
Facts.
and as far as orgasm, whether it's listen, an orgasm's happening. Let me just make that clear. An orgasm's happening. Whether
Are you saying regardless?
oh, it's happening.
He said,
For
by,
you.
by any means.
No,
Yeah.
no.
For her
I'm talking
too.
about
the
me.
table.
I'm not talking about me at all. I'd
Oh,
rather
okay.
her than me. But as far an orgasm has to happen. If it
Has
does
to.
not happen, then we did not make love.
Wow.
That's just how I see it. It has to happen, whether it's one time or 8 times. It has to happen. If it's not, then we didn't do anything.
I need you to write a book. I need you to write a book.
Say it again.
I need you to write a book because I was of a very mature age, before I realized that it could happen. Because you would be surprised that a lot of people don't know that is something that for women can happen. And so that is something that I love, that perspective that you're going in there with it. But truth be told, a lot of people don't know. I mean, it had been many years and many people. So I know it's not, just one person or two people who will never get there. And once again, conversation that goes into
that's a whole
different
that's
thing.
a whole thing to unpack.
Yes, but write a book. Because people need
But
your
yeah,
help.
but honestly, I'm firmly against using another person's body just to masturbate. I'm firmly against that.
Man,
I mean, it's for me, it's just like I'm here with you, for you, to connect with you. And if we're not both doing it, the bathroom has a lock and it's over there. And
how about that?
Same level. I mean, I'd love if we had time to talk about what the orgasm means for a man versus woman. But it's just to briefly touch on it. Let me just say from a man's perspective. From a man's perspective, our orgasm is connectedness, right? And if we have an orgasm that is not connecting with someone else, there's an emptiness that comes there. An emptiness, and actually it's a bit of shame in there too. If you're not connecting with somebody with your orgasm. So that's all I'm gonna say on that, because that's like Dr. Nicole. If one day we sit down and we have this full conversation, Sean, Jen, it would be great. But I'm just leaving y'all with that important thing, that an orgasm without connection for a man leaves emptiness, because that that cuddle hormone that women get while breastfeeding and social interaction with friends and all that kind of. Men typically only get it after orgasm. I read that in an article that is unfortunately taken down off of the Focus on the Family website, but there's been studies that show that that hormone that's released only happens for men after orgasm.
The oxytocin, yeah.
Thank you. Oxytocin. I always forget it.
I do too. I do too. But I wanted to, because I want to respect your times, y'all. I really do. I want to wrap up. I'm going to say my percentage, but I'm not going to go delve into it, because if I have to delve into it, we're going to be here for another half hour. But I'll just say it, leave it at this. I put mine 35% energy, 35% communication, because I believe those two are key and essential. And it had a lot to do with what all of y'all said as far as your contribution to that. 25% for foreplay, because I said I think that's important, but it's not as important as the energy and the communication. And the 5% for the amount of time. I didn't even put orgasm on the map, because I feel like if all that is there, orgasm will come. That's not it. It doesn't even need to be considered. We don't even need to talk about it. It's going to happen. And so that is my thought. I just want to go ahead and leave us with some takeaways, or leave the people with some takeaways. And if we can just go around and have each of you just give me your perspective, anything you would love to share as your final word. And go ahead with that. I'll start with Sean, then I'll go to Cariel, Dr. Nicole, and I'll close us out. Go ahead, Sean.
My last takeaway is just understanding that it is important, the influences about sex that you intake in your adolescence years. Those are the things that are going to really guide you and lead you into a healthy and prosperous sexual life. So we have to teach we really have to teach our children to be responsible for those things, and try our best. I know it's the hardest thing in the world to do, but to try to help them along with navigating those things, so that they're not using something that's not using a temporary fix for a lifelong lasting solution, if I'm saying that correctly. Yeah, I think I said that correctly. But just not using these like little quick hits to solve an ever evolving problem. Because again, like Dr. Nicole said, the sex at 20 ain't the same sex at 30, ain't the same sex at 40, 50, so on and so forth. So just understanding that.
Awesome. Thank you, Sean. Go ahead, Cariel.
The one thing that I think is a very important takeaway is that of course, physical limitations aside, the climate of your relationship is reflected in the climate of your sex life. The things that are missing in your relationship will show themselves in your sex life. So just like the question is sex starting before the bedroom, if your relationship has those pieces that are not there, that are not solid, then your sex life has less to stand on. I mean, and also relationships are a structure, and structures are not as sturdy without all of their supports in place. So don't overlook maintaining your sexuality in the relationship, because that's one less thing to help support your relationship, to help it stand firm.
Go ahead, Dr. Nicole. Thank you, Cariel.
My takeaway, the communication. If anybody get anything from this, it's the communication. And I want to just encourage people just to be open to the conversation, not just between spouses, between friends, between parents. It's very important. Most of you don't know I am a pastor, and my ministry was birthed from a communication about sex.
Mm. Wow.
Okay. From a communication about sex. And in that communication about sex, I knew that it was absolutely necessary to provide a platform for women, especially women of God, to be able to have certain types of conversations. Okay. Because the same way you don't want to show up in a bedroom, we don't want to show up with that in other places because of the same judgment that can come. And so I think in order for any of us to have that healthy relationship with our spouses, because I do want to say with our spouses, okay, without judgment, but hopefully you get to that place. If you're not there already, there's so much communication that needs to be had. And so I pray that people will begin to realize from this topic how deep it can go, and where necessary, be open to talking about it.
Wow, thank you, Dr. Nicole. I appreciate you all being on here. Final takeaways, y'all, is start with you. Get out of your own way. And if something's going on, do not hesitate to get help. Like we've all been, I believe, just speaking to whether it's seeing a counselor, seeing a therapist. If you're a person of faith, speak to your pastor, your bishop, your rabbi, whomever, and check in. Find a mentor, get accountability. Make sure you connect with other like-minded people or people who are where you want to be and you may not be there. Don't just look for like-minded people still trying to figure it out. It's okay to surround yourself with other people who've done that and they've gotten through it. They are better for it. They're the wiser. So take advantage of that. And I would say check in often with your partner. That was one of the big things that we've all been saying. That communication piece is everything. Timing is everything. Being mindful about that. And that's a part of the check-in. How is your partner doing right now? Are they hot or real cold? And how can I be there to support you? And if you need support, it's not just no, get off of me. Instead, I need you to support me in this particular way because I'm feeling whatever that thing is. And know your partner's love language. There is so much more to say. And I think we're going to have to end up having a part 2. This keeps happening. As long as I know Cario and Sean are good for a part 2 of conversations. Dr. Nicole, we would love to have you again.
I'm not coming back. No, I'm just joking.
I think we would love to have you again because I think there was so much more that we can speak to, and we can just make it clear cut and just go straight in. I also want to just thank y'all for your patience. There were some technical issues on the back end going on, so I'm going to address those and make sure that the replay is put where it's supposed to, because lots of people, I'm here trying to troubleshoot and stay in present and be in the moment. But this will be available for the replay for those who could not tune in live. And we appreciate those who came on, those who commented. Again, this is Life Notes with Jen. Thank you all for joining. You all enjoy the rest of your day. Take care, y'all. Bye-bye.